It started as the dream of a small group of junior curling boosters in East York. In 1975, the dream became reality, and the World Junior Curling Championship was born.
Lion! Hurry! Hurry!
It developed under the direction of Uniroyal executive Bob Sutherland, and today takes its place as a premier event in the curling world. Before the Uniroyal became officially sanctioned, a junior bonspiel had been growing steadily over the years at the East York Curling Club. Willis Blair, one of the founding members of the Junior Curling Championships, remembers.
It had been slowly building up. We had several provinces, and Buffalo were in first, and then Scotland, and then a team from West Germany. So it wasn't long until it was determined that there had to be other countries along, and maybe the same countries as were in the Silver Broom.
In 1989, 14 years after its modest beginning, the Uniroyal becomes the Uniroyal Goodrich, a dual world championship for junior men and women.
I think that women's curling now will benefit greatly from the younger participants having the exposure to a world championship and working through from their provincial Canadian to work to get to a world championship. I think it's just a great thing for curling.
But looking back, what has it meant to all those who have come and gone? Each year, the curlers came to compete with hope and desire, not to mention emotion. And each year they left with gratitude for the experience. They spoke different languages, but found an instant communication on ice.
Competitors are all become good friends with one another. And the rapport that develops between the players, no matter what country they're from, is really something.
They were the youth of 10 curling countries, and they shared a camaraderie that made them richer for the rest of their lives. This is their story. Canada's Robbie King was the favorite for the first championship held where the Uniroyal idea was born, at the East York Curling Club. Bud Somerville of Superior, Wisconsin, was the reigning world champion from 1974, and as honorary chairman of the Uniroyal threw the ceremonial opening stone. By going unbeaten in the round robin, Canada drew a first-place bye in the three-team playoffs, and Sweden defeated Scotland 9-8 in the semi-final. The final was a super battle, a 6-all tie after 9 ends. Sweden's Jan Ulsten had a last rock on the 10th, but he hit and rolled out, forcing an extra end. On the extra end, Rob King tried to draw his last stone behind one of 2 Swedish rocks in the house. Sweepers Chris King and Bill Fowlis work on it. And Canadian third, Brad Hanna, sweeps it into the 4-foot circle. But it's wide open for Ulsten's final stone, and this time he doesn't have to stick around. An 8-6 victory. And the gold medals in 1975 went not to the Canadian favorites, but to the Swedish team of Jan Ulsten, Mats Nyberg, Anders Grön, and Bo Soderstrom. And the first worldwide rivalries in junior curling were forged. In its second year, the Uniroyal returned to the birthplace of curling, Scotland. The setting was Avlemore in the Scottish Highlands, and in natural prominence in the ceremonies were the pipes and drums.
Drums and pipes! Wide and right! Quick march!
Norway had its first playoff action in '76, joining Sweden, Canada, and Scotland. But on the 7th end of the semi-final against Sweden, Norway's Morten Sagode missed his final stone. Sweden scored a big 4-ender and with an 8-2 victory went on to the final, where Canada's Paul Gausel or Scotland's Bob Kelly would provide the opposition. But Scotland's bid also ended on the 7th. Kelly was facing 4 Canadian stones when he threw his final rock, needing to draw through a narrow port on the center line. Willie Jameson and Keith Douglas can't do much with it, and he wrecks on the front. Gausel counted 4 and went on to beat the Scots 11-3. The Canada-Sweden title game was another thrilling showdown. It was 3-3 after 9 ends. With 3 stones to come, Gausel was lying 1 and wanted to split the house with a draw to the open side.
Come on, on it! Right up! Go! Go!
Just about perfect, and Canada had 2 counters. The choice facing Jan Ulsten of Sweden was whether to play for a tap back on the shot stone or to try a hit and roll across the house. They go for the hit. It all rides on this shot. But there will be no repeat champion. Ulsten's stone hits the wrong side, and Canada has won its first Uniroyal title with a 4-3 victory. Gausel and his team of Neil Houston, Glenn Jackson, and Kelly Stern had their moment of glory. Claude Allard, the president of Uniroyal, presented the symbol of world junior curling supremacy. Quebec City is known as the cradle of North America. It is quaint, continental, and congenial. And it hosts a carnival each year that offers 2 fun-filled weeks of enchantment. Monsieur Bonhomme is the carnival symbol, and the night parade welcomed the curlers to the 3rd Uniroyal Championship. Coley Campbell, the president of the International Curling Federation, and Uniroyal's executive director, Bob Sutherland, played a role in the opening ceremonies. So did Jean-Francois Bertrand for the province of Quebec, and Bob Grierson, president of the Royal Caledonia Curling Club. Claude Fage of France was one of 4 skips who were in the field at Avlemore. In the early going in Quebec City, Fage was almost a one-man show. This was the kind of shot-making he produced. A perfect freeze in the 8th end of his opening game, which led to a victory over the U.S. Switzerland's team was skipped by Jörg Tanner, a promising young shotmaker. He lost to Canada in a 4th-place tiebreaker, but 4 years later, Tanner was to win a silver broom men's world championship in London, Ontario. Chalk up another credit for Uniroyal experience. The Italians, with skip Massimo Alvera, enjoyed a moment of glory when they beat Canada in round-robin play. Longtime Uniroyal fan Jack Crawford recalls.
When Massimo Alvera announced to everybody in the tavern or wherever we were for dinner that tomorrow he would beat the Canadians. The Italian team had never won a game in the Uniroyal, and he beat the Canadians in an extra end, and that just made it. You'd have thought they won the World Cup.
The Italians won 3 other games for a 4-5 record, their best showing ever. For the 3rd straight year, Sweden met Canada in the Uniroyal final. Anders Grahn had defeated Norway in the semis, while Bill Jenkins' team beat the United States to reach the final. The Swedish skip made some excellent shots, but there was no stopping Jenkins. The Charlottetown skip curled at over 90% proficiency. On the 5th end, he set up a 3-point steal that gave Canada an insurmountable 6-2 lead. The writing was on the wall, and they went on to a 9-5 victory. Gold medals for Bill Jenkins, John Scales, Sandy Stewart, and Alan Mayhew. Jenkins reminisces.
I think standing on the podium, it was just such a shock, where we had gone through a high early in the week, gone through a very low period in midweek, and then to come back, I don't think it really set in until probably a week or 2 later that we actually did win, and what that Saturday and Sunday meant to us, it's hard to even explain today.
The Alpine peaks tower above Grlndelwald. and the sound of the Alphorn was in the air, where 3,000 people lived a simplistic life in 1978. But there was nothing simple about Grlndelwald Sports Center, a superb arena in keeping with the background. Pin trading was an early tradition at the Uniroyal and was always accompanied by friendly handshakes and smiles. The championship game in '78, another Canada-Sweden matchup, was one for the memory books. Canada's Gausel, back with 2 changes on his team, was trying for a second title against Thomas Håkansson of Sweden. In a 2-all tie after 6 ends, the 2 skips made 4 great shots. Gausel started it all with a hit and roll. Håkansson had to skin past the guard. No problem at all. Out goes the Canadian stone. Gausel had the challenge of trying to put it back with an in-turn draw. Almost fully buried behind the guard. Håkansson knows he doesn't have much room for error on this last shot of the 7th end. He wanted a come-around takeout, and he'd like to blank the end as well. He has it, and Per Lindemann spins to sweep the Swedish stone and gets it out for the blank end. Really a brilliant shot to keep Last Rock control. Canada stole a point to lead 3-2 on the final end, but Gausel was staring at defeat on his last rock. He needed a double takeout over outside ice.
Whoa! Whoa!
And he made it, snuffing out a possible winning deuce for Sweden. Håkansson still can force an extra end with a draw to cut out the Canadian counter. And this is one of the very few misses in a curling classic. Canada wins 4-2. Junior curling glory for Paul Gausel, John Ferguson, Doug McFarlane, and Kelly Stern. In Grlndelwald, a place of ultimate beauty. Uniroyal 5 was held in the Western Prairies, Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, where curling is almost a way of life. Here in the rich farm and grazing country, it was to be a special attraction with total community involvement. Moose Jaw welcomed the best in junior curling with a civic parade, and in the center of focus was the town's arena, unique in its design with a swayback roof. The scarlet of the Canadian Mounties was also on display at the opening ceremonies. Among the familiar faces this year were Claude Fage of France and Massimo Alvera of Italy. Alvera had the honor of throwing the first stone. This was the 5th straight year he skipped his country's team at the Uniroyal, but his experience would not be enough to produce a playoff contender. Canada won 8 games in the round robin, but Scotland's Andrew McQuiston beat Darren Fish and his team with this double takeout on the 10th end of the semi-final. It was a major disappointment for the youngster from Alberta. The U.S. defeated Norway in the other semi-final, and the losers move into a Uniroyal innovation. Canada met Norway in the first ever bronze medal playoff. It was over early. Fish's team took advantage of Norway misses, and this draw by the Canadian skip closed off the front. Sjur Lewin of Norway had to try to find a hole to get in against 4 Canadian counters. He gave up 4 on the first end, and Canada romped to a 9-4 victory. Lewin later was named the All-Star skip in Moose Jaw. For the first time in the history of the Uniroyal, neither Canada nor Sweden made it to the final. The United States led the title game 5-4 going home. Scotland's McQuiston didn't have last rock, and he tried to play a front ring guard on this front stone. The Scots lied too, but in his third Uniroyal try, North Dakota's Donnie Barcombe is not to be denied. With his father, Coach Don Sr., watching closely, the American skip went for the double takeout. It's a World Championship shot. 6-4 for Team USA, the first Uniroyal title for that country. The presentation was made by Uniroyal Vice President Ken Cleaver to Don Barcombe, Randy Darling, Bobby Stalker, and Earl Barcombe, the world's best junior curlers in 1979. Kitchener-Waterloo offered evidence of its German heritage to this edition of the Uniroyal. For curlers and visitors, it was Oktoberfest in March, a rollicking version of typical entertainment in the twin Ontario cities. In sharp contrast, the surrounding rural community had quieter interests and a work ethic shown in the products at Kitchener's renowned farmers market. On the ice, there were two Uniroyal milestones. Denmark's Jack Scherolf and his team were coached by his mother, Johanna Scherolf, who became the first woman coach in Uniroyal history. And the Swiss and Scottish team went into the record books for an all-time low-scoring game. They blanked 9 straight ends before Scotland's Andrew McQuiston used his last stone on the 10th for a 1-0 victory. McQuiston had been a bronze and silver medalist in previous tries. He and Canada's Mert Thomset had 8-1 records in the round robin and won their semifinals over the USA and Sweden. The final was memorable as Scotland took a 4-3 lead after 9 ends. Thomset quickly put 3 counters in the house on the 10th, and then came the shot heard round the world. Scottish third Norman Brown turned the tide with a magnificent triple takeout. It rates as one of curling's greatest shots in a world championship, and it had to be a tremendous boost for Scotland. The Scots went on to remove 3 more Canadian stones, one at a time, leaving Thomset with only a draw to the 8-foot for a tie. He came right down the middle on the keenest part of the ice. It's over, 5-3 for Scotland, and curling's mother country had won its first international title in 13 years. Andrew McQuiston, Norman Brown, Hugh Aitken, and Richard Adams, the gold medalists in 1980 at Kitchener-Waterloo. In 1981, the Alps beckoned the curlers once again, this time to Megeve, France. But though the scene had changed, the matchups were the same in the Uniroyal semifinals, Sweden versus Canada and the United States meeting Scotland. The Canadian team, skipped by Denis Marchand of Trois-Rivières, Quebec, was right at home in France and zoomed through the round robin with 8 wins and 1 loss. In the semifinal against Sweden, Marchand quickly had the upper hand, and this 2-pointer on the 4th end gave him a 4-1 lead. Canada's third, Denis Cecile, helped his team's cause on the 5th end. His Swedish counterpart, Peter Svedlund, removed 2 Canadian stones and set up 3 counters for his skip, Thomas Norgren. Marchand would have settled for a hit and rollout, but Cecile had something else in mind. A triple takeout. Not in the same crucial situation as Norman Brown's in 1980, but a big plus for Canada in the semifinal. The Marchand foursome had an 8-5 lead going home, and there wasn't much doubt about the outcome. He had a simple takeout to advance to the title game against Peter Wilson of Scotland. For the Swedish foursome, there was another disappointment to come. They lost 5-3 to Ted Purvis of the United States in the bronze medal game. Scotland had a lackluster 6-3 record in the round robin, but now the real defense of the Uniroyal began in the final. Canada blanked the first end, but the Scots buried 2 stones behind cover in the second. Marchand had to try this draw to cut them out. A 2-point steal for Scotland, and with it came confidence and momentum. Wilson never lost his advantage. His team led 6-5 on the 10th end with last rock. On his final stone, Canada's Marchand tried to draw behind a front guard to force an extra end. He has a piece of the 4-foot circle, but it's open for a takeout by Wilson, and a second Uniroyal title for Scotland is there for the taking. Wilson threw it firmly. An 8-5 win for Scotland, and back-to-back Uniroyal victories. Uniroyal President Claude Allard made the presentation to this Scottish Championship team. Peter Wilson, Jim Cannon, Roger McIntyre, and John Parker, the best in 1981. There was excitement and emotion at Uniroyal 8 in Fredericton. One of Uniroyal's proud champions, Bill Jenkins, threw the ceremonial first stone 5 years after his victory in Quebec City. Christophe Boin of France became a 5-year participant in '82 and the only curler to play all team positions for his country in the Uniroyal. But the young man who shot the lights out all week was 19-year-old Soren Grön of Sweden. He ended the round robin with a last rock extra end win over Canada, sweeping 9 straight victories and a bye into the championship final. Scotland's Robin Gray met Canada in the semi-final, his team trying for 3 straight Uniroyal titles. But after leading 2-0 after 3 ends, Gray never scored again. And when he missed his last rock on the 10th, Canada was a 4-2 winner. With one change on the team he had at Kitchener, Canada's Mert Thomset went gunning for the title that had eluded him in 1980. But he appeared to be destined to settle once more for a silver medal. Down 2-0, playing the second end of the final, Thomset had a chance for 2 with an open takeout. But he bounced off the Swedish stone, killed his own, and rolled too far with his shooter. Instead of a 2-all tie, it was 3-0 for Sweden. Sweden was soon out in front 4-1. And Grön was playing flawlessly, as he did all week. A good hit over outside ice to blank the 6th end. The crusher for Canada came on the 7th. An open takeout for Thomset, but Billy McTavish can't sweep the Swedish stone out, and the remainder of the game became just a formality. Sweden went on to a 6-2 victory, and Uniroyal Vice President Lorne Hiller saluted the first team to go unbeaten to the Uniroyal title. Soren Grön, Niklas Jarund, Henrik Holmberg, and Anders Svennerstedt. In 1983, Uniroyal curlers heard the cry, "Go west, young men," and headed for Medicine Hat, where there was no shortage of off-the-ice activity. You couldn't miss the Western motif nor the sound of the fiddle. Soren Grln was back with the same personnel that was truly invincible in Fredericton. But what a difference a year made. Though he made some shots like this one, the touch wasn't there, and Grln was not the same curler. Sweden finished with a 4-5 record. The John Bass team was bidding for the first Uniroyal title for Canada in 5 years. After Scotland knocked out Denmark in the tiebreaker, Mike Hayes' foursome made it close in the semifinal. But this was the clincher. A double takeout on the 10th end to mark a 7-5 victory, and Canada advanced to meet Norway in the title game. In most Uniroyal finals, there was one key shot. For John Bass, it came on end number 6. With a 2-1 lead, he had a chance to play a chip and roll to set up 3 Canadian counters. What a marvelous shot for a 5-1 advantage. It was all over in 8 ends. A 7-2 victory for Canada, and a tremendous thrill for John Bass, Bruce Webster, Dave McInerney, and Jim Donahue. Uniroyal President Stuart Smith presented the Canadians with the symbol of the World Junior Curling Championship.
The thing I remember the most about the Uniroyal was the closing ceremonies, when we were on the podium and with the national anthem playing, and the presentation of the medals is probably the highlight.
Like most past Uniroyal players, Bass still enjoys following the event.
I do follow it as much as I can because it's fun to watch and brings back a lot of memories, a lot of good feelings that you get from it.
Hear ye! Hear ye! Hear ye! Welcome to the city of Cornwall. Oyez! 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 Bienvenue à la ville de Cornwall.
Canada was the defending champion at Cornwall, but Jamie Schneider's team was not at home on ice that was not conducive to their come-around game, and they failed to make the playoffs. Scotland's Mike Hay lost his first 3, then resorted to a straight hitting game and won 6 in a row to finish in 3rd place. André Flotron and his team produced the best showing for Switzerland in 10 Uniroyals. He had served as the 5th player for his country the previous year in Medicine Hat and drew on that international experience. His foursome dominated the round robin with 9 consecutive wins, earning a bye into the final. Here is an example of André's shot making. A perfect freeze, one of the toughest shots in curling. One of the special features at Cornwall was a challenge game involving the 8 previous winning skips. Double champion Paul Gausel skipped for North America's Donnie Barcombe, John Bass, and Bill Jenkins. Gausel made a shot or two that turned back the clocks. But Europe's Soren Grln, Jan Ulston, Peter Wilson, and Andrew McQuiston were the winners in the exhibition. Barcombe and the Canadians had to accept the golden carrot. Then the former gold medalists made a presentation to retiring executive director Bob Sutherland on behalf of all Uniroyal curlers. The Al Edwards team from North Dakota met Scotland in the semifinal. It was a shooter's match, and double kills like this one gave the Americans the edge and a 4-1 victory. The Swiss-US semifinal produced some classic curling, like this shot by Swiss third Andreas Henny on the 5th end. Not to be outdone, the American skip had to come up with a shot to bail his team out of trouble in a very close game. He was trying to freeze into the pocket. Flotron had a pat on the back for his opponent as the shot eliminated a potential big end. It became another last rock finish, a 6-all tie on the 10th end, and Edwards could win it by drawing through a port with his final stone. Halfway there, it looked good, and the American hearts were really pumping. He makes it, and the U.S. won its 2nd Uniroyal Championship 7-6. The 1984 World Junior Champions enjoy their moment of glory. Al Edwards, Mark Larson, Dewey Baisley, and Kurt Disher. The 11th Uniroyal was held in Scotland, where the roots of curling lie. Here, the game's history and heritage are paramount. The first grand match took place in 1847, and now, nearly 140 years later, Perth was to have a spectacular match in the World Junior Final. The Crawford family, Jack, Isabel, and son Scotty, have traveled to all 14 Uniroyals and consider Scotland one of their favorite places to visit. They became involved when they started billeting curlers in their Scarborough, Ontario home.
The next year we took 3. And the one who had been here the 2 years and took to answering our phone and saying, Crawford residents, adopted son here.
Yeah, we've been to a couple of silver brooms, and they are sort of staid and sober. They expect everybody to make their shots. The kids, you don't expect them all to make them, and they get excited when they do make a good shot. So, you know, it's the enthusiasm, I think, that keeps you going back for more.
Back to 1985, and former champion Andrew McQuiston threw a Scottish curling relic, the old grey mare, to open this edition of the Uniroyal. Canada, Scotland, and Switzerland were the favored teams in 1985, but with 13-year-old Thomas Ulsrud at lead, Norway surprised Canada and spoiled their unblemished record in round-robin play. Christian Sauger of Switzerland was an underdog against Scotland in the semi-finals, but his team jumped in front 3-0 and went on to author a big upset. His shot-making was an omen of what was to come in the final. Scotland was beaten 7-3 and had to settle for the consolation prize, topping Norway for the bronze medal. The Canada-Swiss final, following the Uniroyal pattern, was a great showdown. It was 5-all in the 10th, and Sauger had his chance to bury behind a Canadian guard. Canada's Bobby Ursel tried to go around the guard to clip it out, but he peels off the guard. And the Swiss had a potential winning stone if Sauger could put back the all-important guard. Sauger couldn't have placed it much better. It was dead in line, 8 feet in front, and no way to go around. Ursel had only one shot with his last rock, a running split to blanket and force an extra end. An all-or-nothing attempt. Fantastic. One of the greatest clutch shots in the history of curling. And for the first time in a Uniroyal final, the teams go on to an extra end. Ursel had one more perfect shot still to come. With his first stone on the 11th, he knocked off 2 guards and spun his shooter away. Sauger had to draw to the empty house, and Ursel had an open hit for the championship. Perth won't forget that shot for a long time. And Canada wins 6-5. Bobby Ursel, Brent Mandela, Gerald Chick, and Mike Ursel, the kings of World Junior Curling in 1985. Dartmouth is the city across the harbor from Halifax and has to assert its good points to attract attention away from the bigger city. In 1986, Dartmouth was ready to do that as it played host to the Uniroyal, with a warmth of character, personality, and total community involvement that made the event unforgettable. Sweden and Germany emerged from a 4-way tiebreaker for 3rd place after the round robin, beating Norway and Switzerland to advance to the semi-finals. Canada had gone undefeated with 9 straight wins, with Scotland 8-1. They were the natural choices to win the semis, but both had their problems. German skip Dieter Kolb made shots like this to grab a startling 5-0 lead over Scotland. Scotland's David Aiken fought back and had moved in front 7-6 on the 10th, but he had to cover his shot stone with last rock against him. It drew over a trifle too much, and Germany's Kolb had a chance to score a winning 2 on this come-around. If he moves the Scottish stone, it's all over. But the West Germans get only a single, And it's a 7-all tie going to an extra end. It seemed to be almost a miracle, but Aiken had only a simple draw to an open house to win the semi-final. All the way back from 5-0, Scotland won it 8-7. Canada and Sweden had waged a seesaw struggle in the other semi-final, and Sweden led 6-5 after 9 ends. But Canada's Kevin Martin could at least tie with his last stone. He rolls across and bumps the Swedish stone to count 2 for a 7-6 victory. And it's on to the final against Scotland. It was 3-3 after 6 ends in the title game, and the 7th was really pivotal. Canada was lying 1, and Aiken tried to draw between 2 Canadian stones into the 4-foot circle. Not quite there, but what he left was a dicey option. If Martin wanted to gamble for 3, maybe 4, the front yellow could be driven back to split the back yellow. He decided that it was too dangerous. Tapping his own stone back to score 2 was a more conservative shot, and he thought he knew how the ice was working. Martin played the outturn, expecting his stone to pull enough for the raise. It must have looked good because Canadian third, Rick Feeney, kept the brushes going. But look out. It didn't bend, and he pushed in the Scottish stone for a 1-point steal. Martin thought he was playing the safe shot, but instead he fell behind 4-3. Canada tied it on the 8th, but Scotland blanked the 9th end, and it came down to Aiken's last rock. He could win with a draw to the 8-foot or by using the Canadian stone for backing. Aiken wasn't liked, and third, Robin Halliday, now was playing the line to Canada's stone. It's a victory for Scotland, and the skip's mother, Libby Aitken, shares a precious moment with her son. David Aiken, Robin Halliday, Peter Smith, and Harry Riley accept Scotland's 3rd Uniroyal trophy from Uniroyal President Lloyd Spalter. In Victoria on beautiful Vancouver Island, the bloom of springtime comes early, and the city has an air of tranquility. There is still time to pause for tea, with a touch of elegance, and the people have never lost their sense of tradition. Canada and Scotland had 8-1 records in the round robin. The Canadians whipped Norway 11-5, but the Scots needed last rock in an extra end to subdue Switzerland in the other semi-final. In the 9th end of the final, Canada's Hugh McFadden tried to freeze to a Scottish stone in the 4-foot. That comment told the story, and in a 2-all tie, McFadden and his third, Jonathan Meade, knew they had given Scotland's Douglas Dryborough a chance to go 2 points up. He tries to follow McFadden's line, but his stone pulled too much, pushed his own stone back, and scored only 1 for a 3-2 lead. Canada's big chance came on Meade's last stone. He tried to draw behind a wide corner guard to set up a possible 2 points that would win it for the team from Winnipeg. It was almost fully buried, and Meade got a salute from Scottish third, Phil Wilson. What followed was another one of the great shots in Uniroyal history. Dryborough played his come-around tight and firm, a gorgeous shot, rolling away from trouble to the open side of the house. Just 3 stones left, and McFadden elected to try for a head-on freeze, the only way to set up his deuce. The weight was almost perfect, but he froze on the corner of the Scottish stone. For Dryborough, this was the kind of hit he'd been making with deadly accuracy all week. Flush on the nose. The best the Canadian skip could do now was to tie and to go on to the extra end. But first he had to hit and stick. But he's heavy and rolling out. A 3-2 victory for Scotland. Its 4th Uniroyal title, and another dramatic climax for one of the world's premier sports events. Douglas Dryborough, Phil Wilson, Lindsay Clark, and Billy Andrew are presented the World Championship medals by Uniroyal's David Shaw. The mountains of Bavaria and a village with 2 of the world's most famous castles provided the setting for the top junior curlers in 1988. The castles are accessible from the village of Fussen, but only by foot or horse and buggy. The history of Fussen dates back to Roman times, But 40 young curlers were about to write a modern chapter in the Bavarian heritage. ICF President Philip Dawson officially opened the championship.
It is with pleasure that I declare open for play the 14th Uniroyal World Junior Curling Championship.
Canada's Jim Sullivan was trying to end a 2-year Scottish reign as Uniroyal champions, and his New Brunswick team started with 6 straight victories. Against Denmark, Sullivan had a 3-1 lead, but he missed 2 takeouts on the 7th end, and Torben Nielsen had a free draw to pick up 4 points and jumped to a surprising 5-3 advantage. Sullivan came right back with a superb shot on the 8th end, a perfect angle takeout to score 3 and bounce back in front 6-5. Denmark tied it on the 10th, then saw Sullivan miss another wide-open takeout on the 11th. The Danes were ecstatic with the 7-6 upset, Canada's only loss of the round robin. Norway's Thomas Ulsrud challenged Sullivan in the semifinals, and the best shots of the game came on the 7th end. The 16-year-old Norwegian ran through a narrow port to remove the Canadian shot rock. It was up to Sullivan to duplicate that shot. He did, and went on to score a 6-4 win. Sweden defeated Switzerland 7-5 in the other semifinal, and winning skip Peter Lindholm couldn't hide his delight with his final shot. Canada got the jump on Sweden in the first end of the final. Lindholm couldn't remove a Canadian stone behind a guard, and Sullivan drew for a 2-0 lead. The game was won and lost on the 5th end. The Swedish skip tried to play a layup to a Canadian counter at the back of the house, but he was just a bit heavy. Sullivan then played a perfect, precise chip out. 2 for Canada. A 4-1 lead, and the Canadians never looked back. The final score was 4-2, a 6th Uniroyal title for Canada, while Norway defeated Switzerland to capture the bronze. David Schaub presents the Uniroyal trophy to the proud 1988 champions, Jim and Charles Sullivan, Daryl Burgess, and Danny Alderman of Canada. Over the years, the Uniroyal World Junior Championships have left indelible memories of brilliant shot-making, emotional high points, and epic confrontations. Along with Uniroyal principals and coordinators and the organizing committees in 14 locations, they have also created something very special. A sports event with spirit and vibrancy. An event that will live on and grow with new dimensions.